I've been in the digital space for almost 20 years now. And at no other time has the change really accelerated to the point that we're not preaching the promise of what can be, but we're actually, everyone is resisting, or we're helping people struggle with the change that's here. And one of the things, when I said I'm on a mission, what I'm trying to do is, those who are struggling with adapting to the change, I'm trying to work with them to realize the depth of experience, and the market research industry is one of those industries that has an incredible depth of integrity around scientific method, about rigor of analysis, that they need to bring it to what's going on in the digital space. Because the other side of the coin is everyone is trying to do things faster, cheaper, and with less effort than ever before. And a lot of that rigor gets lost. But what we're trying to do as a company, and what we're trying to do with organizations, is really help them bring what their strength is and not get caught up with the craziness of change, but actually bring their skill sets and adapt to change. And it does take a lot of work and innovation. And one of the groups that I've had the pleasure of working with is the Canadian Opera. And I don't know how many people are subscribers of theater or the arts right now. How many people donate to the arts? You know what I mean? It's great to see the people that do, but it is a minority, and that's a big challenge for many charitable organizations, and especially arts organizations. It's one thing going to a hospital and saying, please give because someone in your family may have been sick, but try to get to people to donate to the arts. So a little bit of background, I run two companies. One is Delvinia, which is what I was born out of, and what I've been running for 14 years. And one of our spin-off companies is Asking Canadians. And what Delvinia is, and I'm here really talking from the Delvinia hat today, what Delvinia is a digital customer experience design firm. So we try to use all these interesting technologies, but from a customer experience point of view. It's all putting the customer first and adapting and changing to what's going on in the marketplace, how people are embracing technology in their lives. When you're trying to do that, we're trying to do that with companies that are wanting to adapt and take on social media and take on, build their websites and create e-commerce sites or use mobile. But what a lot of them lack is the understanding of what are your customers doing. It's not about what you want to do just because you're getting it done, but how is embracing this technology going to change the way you're doing business. And one of the challenges we have is we can't talk about a lot of the work we do on the Delvinia side. So when I have an opportunity to take a group like the Canadian Opera, that's one of my stipulations. They don't have the money to really pay us our regular fees, but I enjoy taking them along this path that we take them along so I can actually talk about it and use it as part of my mission to change. And the way we do it is we have a very unique perspective. We always start with trying to understand insight around the customer. And that's why I have such an appreciation for the role of market research. The challenge we face is that we can't always apply market research methods in the way they should be applied because we don't have time or we don't have the budget. And we're constantly faced with that. So what we've tried to do is develop programs that are steeped in method and scientific method, but can get people moving along faster. If they desire to do the research the way they've always done it, we're happy to bring in research partners, work on the research, but many times we need the quick tools that will probably get us 50, 70% there. But when we're developing it, we spend a lot of time innovating and understanding and testing the method before we do it. And today's presentation is really about one of those. So my introduction to the Canadian Opera Company, I was not an opera fan. I really, like everyone else, thought that someone stood on stage with horns and would just preach out some crazy music. And I would love some opera music, but to sit for 3.5 hours in a performance really didn't excite me. I had the head of fundraising come to me to kind of do some pro bono work to help promote one of their events. And this was 5 years ago. And my question was, I'm discussing, I said, how the hell did opera build this unbelievable theater at University in Queen? It's a beautiful, and it's an engineering marvel. And we got into a story about how the organization had evolved and what they had done and how well run the board was. And then I actually went to a performance, and I was blown away by the production value. Now, at the time I hadn't been to a European opera, I hadn't been to the Met, I hadn't seen how extravagant operas can become, but the I was really blown away in terms of the different senses that it created in terms of the theatrical performance and the sets. And I sat there with them after I'd gone through that, and I said, now, you built this new building, you can't get a ticket, everyone is interested, but why does your website suck so bad? And their kind of question was, well, we don't have money for it. Everything we do is going into the productions, and we just built this building, and we just raised our money and all the effort, but we don't have, I said, well, 3 years from now, when they build, I didn't know they were building the TIFF building at that point, but when the next sexy building comes online, what are you going to do to keep these people? And I tried to help them say, it's about the digital experience. Everyone is digital. How much do you know about the digital experience of these people? And we started a journey, and going into the digital space isn't about having quick wins. It's very much a journey. It's, this has been 5 years, and while everyone is struggling to figure out what they can do now and have success, and with Facebook coming on, how's it going to help improve sales? The one benefit I had working with the opera, like I said, they had no money. So they had some money, but they didn't have the money to really bring our effort to bear. And I looked at it saying, what an opportunity, a very high-profile group that needed the help. And I wanted to have a great model to share in terms of what they've been doing. So they really embraced the situation. And when we started with them, this is what I learned. 40% of their budget comes from donations. Europe, it's all state-funded. Opera and the arts in Europe is state-funded. It's unbelievable. Here, 40% comes from ticket sales, 20% comes from government, and 40% comes from donations. So it's something that really need to embrace in terms of, especially in an age where media is pulling everybody in every direction. The perception of the traditional opera goer to them, where everyone has gray hair, nobody is using any technology. They did have, like I said, had 99% attendance at their performances. And this wasn't about how do you just create, a digital experience. This was about how do you embrace digital technologies to enhance the opera experience. So we have a strategy. It's usually round, it's a little oval right now. But we have a very simple strategy that we try to employ. The first is that market research component, understanding the behaviors of the consumers before you actually do anything. Don't build anything until you understand it. Then the strategy comes in terms of understanding, developing the strategy that's relevant to the organization, and then we get to build stuff. So getting into the insight part, we had just come off at the time building like I said, one of the challenges we have is having the time to be able to do the proper research to understand behavior. But around that time, I had built our Asking Canadians online research community, and we were able to profile them on digital behavior. And one of the things that I enjoy doing, and one of the benefits of being in Canada, it's really great to be in Canada to do R&D, because you can get thousands and thousands of dollars to underwrite your own efforts in research and development in Canada. And we were able to put together a really interesting R&D project where, imagine if we could project digital behavior down to every household and down to the postal code level. And we developed this tool, and I was able to bring it to the opera. And I wanted to quickly find out what were the digital habits and behaviors of the COC customers. So what we did was we took 4 years of their data, and we had about 35,000 transactional records. And this was all records of people who transacted either online or offline. And we also conducted an online survey, and we also did one-on-one interviews. So it's not that because I'm a digital guy, we don't use traditional methods of collecting data. It really is what's relevant to the situation. But we had a lot of data, and it's really incredible, these arts organizations or these charitable organizations that have tons of transactional data. They know a lot about their subscribers and donors. They just don't know, or usually don't have the budget to do anything with. But the first insight that we found out that at the time, only about 18% of people were transacting online. And that could be because they were an older crowd and they wanted to talk to somebody. But digging into it we said, well, is that really the reason? Is only 18% because their audience doesn't really use technology? This is where our data came in quickly. Literally in a day, we were able to determine what the digital behaviors of their customers were. And what we were able to see is that people who go to the opera are actually more digitally inclined than the average Canadian. And that was kind of an interesting point. The next one was, they're doing more online. They're actually falling into groups that what we considered with social versus time-starved versus lagging. So when we took our data and we actually developed the segmentation around it, we looked at, when you're designing a digital experience, you want to understand where people fall into these places. So if you're highly social, that's when you want to do cool Facebook stuff. If you're time-starved, it's all about efficiency. And when we ran the data against our segmentation of where people fell, what was really interesting was that the opera fell into two major groups. One was what we call the loaded and overloaded families. And those are the time-starved. Those are the people that own everything. Not surprising, you know what I mean? We have all the banks and the financial institutions in Toronto who, a lot of these people are going to the arts. And they have every technology possible, but they don't have a lot of time. Now what these people wanted, what we had found out, was they wanted to make their life easier. If I'm going to use the website, how do I get what I want? I don't want a great, you know, one of the exciting websites at the time that was winning a lot of awards was Cirque du Soleil. It was a beautiful experience. Like everything with Cirque is just a beautiful experience. But I would go on, how do you buy a ticket? You know, how do you find what you want? If you want to sit there and watch the website, it's wonderful. But it wasn't really designed for these type of people. The other group, what we found, which was really interesting, that there was a young, digitally savvy crowd that was going to the opera. And what they really wanted was, I want to be engaged, I want to share. One of the interesting things with opera is that, you know, usually if it's a couple, one person loves it, one person hates it. So there's a lot of people who go to the opera by themselves. And then they come out and they have no one to talk to. What a great vehicle for the digital space, because you can actually share stories and talk to people about it. So when we went through this insight exercise, what we found out was really that people, those that go to the COC are actually more engaged in the arts, not surprisingly, and they donate online. They're not against the online medium. So when we compared it really against those who are offline and those who are online, there was really no difference between the two. So there's no reason why we couldn't embrace the digital experience. And that was a really fascinating insight for us. So this led us to the strategy. And we had one mission, and it was really to create an interactive digital experience that inspired people to stay engaged with the opera. And the reason I say inspire people to stay engaged with the opera is because at that time when we were building it, they didn't need any marketing. Everybody was coming, everybody knew about it. But I was planning for 3 years down the road. And this wasn't about, this was before Facebook became mainstream. This was before social media exploded. This was about preparation. Now, in our firm, we were seeing all this emerging. But how do you engage and migrate people online? Interesting way to spell migrate. But what we wanted to do with them was, we knew if we could migrate people online at that time strategically, we can move them up that chain and allow the opera to do what they've done best for many years. And first engage them, then get them to commit, and then have them there to donate. And this is presenting this 5 years ago, and then having the director of marketing go, so when can the website be built? We need it ready for the next season. That's what we were facing. We had to allow them, say to them, this isn't about tomorrow, this is about 3 years from now. It helped when they weren't paying your full rate, so you could actually hold them back. So the roadmap that we developed was really a 3-stage roadmap. First was, we needed to get the web, the online experience at the time, at the same level as the experience when you walk into the building and the experience of sitting in a performance. That was the first part. Then, what we needed to do, what the vision was now let's get more commitment. Let's use the online channel to increase commitment and share their passion. And then finally, where we're at now is, how do you truly build the relationships with your audience? Because, you know, they're trying to do two things. One is keep the existing subscribers engaged. The other one is they need to find a new audience, because in all arts, subscriptions are declining. So here's what's happened. We built a digital experience. It went from rebuilding the website so that people could get what they wanted, when they wanted, how they wanted. Nobody comes in half the time from the front door anymore of a website. If you're using a search engine, you're coming in wherever that content is. So we had to make sure wherever they came in, they could get to wherever they wanted to. That wasn't about being sexy. That wasn't about being flashy. It was about being really practical to that audience that you wanted to do it. Then what we wanted to do was start collecting data. Because we knew they already collected this transactional data, let's start creating other methods to collect data with them. And then the last part was how do we connect it all into the transactional experience? And that's where the front end of the website was trying to do one thing, but the sophistication of what we were doing at the back end was really fascinating for an arts organization, because they would not have been able to have done this on their own, but they really needed to, this is what they need to do to be able to embrace this change in needs of getting people to donate online. So we overhauled the site, we had a lot of fun, we've won a number of awards with it, and the reason I liked winning awards for the COC site, besides, it's nice for our firm to get recognition, but they were actually international awards. So we're bringing the Canadian Opera Company internationally, gaining recognition internationally for what they were doing in Canada as both an arts organization and as within the opera community. And for us, I wanted to make them a model of a leading arts organization using digital technologies, because they were so high profile as it is, and the visuals that we could create and embed in what we were doing was fascinating. So it was really a great experience of the site overhaul. But then we stepped into, as we went along the way, so the site was up, the transactions were working. Now they would send out their renewal brochures, send them out by mail. And the head of marketing said to us, okay, we want to transfer that online. So can you make it as a cool PDF that people can download the brochure? So basically translate it. And we had to stop and we said, look, we have all this research that shows it's all an experience. So the digital brochure isn't a digital brochure anymore. It's an online subscription renewal experience. And we adapted the whole online experience. They still printed their print brochures because people still like getting it in the mail, but the online subscription brochure, experience is a completely different experience to guide people through that's embedded in the site. So once again, it's an experience related to those people. And it's sort of like giving birth to a child. What happened after was that the organization started taking it a step farther from where I was going. They were running past me and saying, well, we're going to send out to all our subscribers and ask them if they don't want to get the print brochure anymore. Let's just push them online. And I was sort of waiting to say that to them, but they stepped up and did it. And that was really interesting because they started migrating people online. That leads to a whole other customer service thing when people do that and then they call up after and said, I didn't get my brochure in the mail. They have to start explaining. So it's all these ancillary experiences that happen. So then, as we were migrating the subscription process and getting them online, now we wanted to try some of the experiential stuff. And for the arts groups to migrate people online and to use digital technologies, it's no better time than today. And because a lot of these technologies are essentially free. It just takes people to use them. And the CBC was broadcasting one of their performances. And what we did was we were able to pull the broadcast from the CBC site, put it on the opera website, but then we used another technology, a chat technology, embedded around it, and we promoted it as a live opera with a discussion. We had the performers who were now around the world performing. It wasn't live, it was taped. So they were off going into Europe and Asia and the Middle East, performing their next production, signing in and talking about their experience and what happened during the opera. So you're actually listening to the opera online, it was all audio, but we're discussing with a performer how they got ready for this next scene or the set design or why they did something. It changed the entire experience of listening to the opera while at your home. It wasn't the same as sitting in a theater watching the opera. It was a different experience. And this was R&D for us. We just wanted to see how it worked. And it was fascinating at how engaged the audience became. And then, of course, because love the data side of things, we created their community panel. And this was, it's taken a while to get that going, but now what's happening is everything is about how do you engage and talk to our subscribers to take them to the next stage, and how do we have to adapt for them. And now what we've been able to do is give them the platform so that they can discuss with their own audience in a very efficient way. And again, what they are for me now is a big R&D site. So we've turned, take the beauty of going into the archives and pulling out stuff before a performance and producing these little opera journeys for people who want to do it. And these things they aren't getting that used, but the reason we want to build it is eventually when it comes up and people are more engaged with the site looking for beyond just a transaction, this stuff will be there and we get to see how people are using it. So they're basically research projects in and of themselves. The results since we've been around, they've had, this was in 2 years, they had a 30% increase in online sales from season to season. So it's continuing, the number of sales online, and it's not surprising because what's happening is more people are transacting online. But the beautiful part is they were prepared for it. So they had that experience done. Online has become the #1 channel for single ticket purchases for them. That's been huge because trying to fill, as looking for new audiences, it's really important, and that was already progressed. So they were 3 years ahead of it. And bounce rates, I don't know if people know bounce rates, it's a calculation, I don't even get it, of how people stay on a site. And Google Analytics has a bounce rate, and it did drop. The lower it gets is, the better it is, and that means more people are engaged and not just going to your site and leaving it, they're engaged in using your site. So that's the little thing. And we've been taking them further, as everyone has tried to embrace social media, because we have all this data, we've developed our little tools to overlay the postal codes of their audience, and we can literally, in a few hours, tell them the readiness of their audience in terms of embracing social media. But what I did was I took them through the same survey and actually assessed how ready they were for social media. And they were actually about 8% more ready than their audience, who was down at about a 35%. And what this does, this little exercise, it's not about rushing to do something on Facebook. What this really told them was, get the internal structure in place. Get the committees, because social media crosses across all your organization, and go through the process of educating your audience, your organization, about how do you embrace social media. And finally, really, the future where I see it is with all the cuts, with this pressure on funding for the arts, for engagement about audience, and as they try to become a global organization, what the opera website has the potential to be the hub for opera content. And when I'm always preaching them 3 years ahead, and it drives them nuts because they really just want to know about how we're getting stuff done today, and I'm this agent of change. But this concept that we launched with them this year called COC Radio, where we licensed a platform that basically now in the cloud, they have the ability to be a broadcast station. They just need to adapt to be able to produce the content, but they can store all the various media properties, pull in how they want, and present it on their website. And because the CBC has really declined in terms of its support of the arts and their programming in the arts, it creates an opportunity for a group like the COC to step up and become that hub for their content. And all that will do is create a much deeper engagement with their audience, because in the long run, for the opera to really sustain itself and to engage people to donate, you really have to be, keeping them engaged all the time, and the digital channel is able to do that. And that's it. Thank you.